About her membership of the club. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Oh, excuse me. I wonder if you'd have the time to take part in some market research.
What's it about?
About this club and your experiences and opinions about being a member. It'll take less than 5 minutes.
Oh, OK then, as long as it's quick.
Can I start by taking your name?
It's Selina Thompson.
Is that Thompson?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. And what do you do for a living?
Well, I'm an accountant, but I'm between jobs at the moment.
I understand. But that's the job I'll put down on the form. And would you mind my asking which age group you fall into? Below 30, 31 to 50, and above?
Over 50, I think we can safely say.
Great, thanks. And which type of membership do you have?
Sorry, I'm not sure what you mean. Do you mean how long?
No, is it a single-person membership?
Oh, right, no, it's a family membership.
Thanks. And how long have you been a member?
Ooh, let me see. I was certainly here 5 years ago, and it was probably 2 to 3 years more than that.
Shall I put down 8?
Oh, I remember now. It's 9, definitely. Sorry.
No problem. I've got that. And the last question in this first part is, what brought you to the club?
Sorry?
How did you find out about the club? Did you see any ads?
Well, I did actually, but I have to say I wasn't really attracted to the club because of that. It was through word of mouth.
So you were recommended by a friend?
Actually, my doctor. I'd been suffering from high blood pressure, and he said the club was very supportive of people with that condition, so I signed up.
Great, thanks.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Now, for the second part of the form, I want to ask a bit more about your experience of the club.
Sure.
How often would you say you use the club?
It varies enormously, depending on how busy I am.
Of course. But on average, per month?
I'd say it averages out at twice a week.
OK, so 8 on average.
Yeah, and 4 of those are aqua aerobics classes.
That leads me to the next question. Would you say the swimming pool is the facility you make most use of?
Fair to say that, yep.
Right, thanks. And are there any facilities you don't use?
One area I realise I've never used is the tennis courts. And there's one simple reason for that.
You don't play tennis?
Actually, I'm not bad at it.
Oh.
It's that I'm not happy having to pay extra for that privilege.
Oh, right. I've made a note of that. Thanks. Now, in the last section, are there any suggestions or recommendations you have for improvements to the club?
Only about health and fitness?
Anything at all?
Well, I'd like to see more social events. It isn't just a question of getting together for games or classes, but other things, you know.
Yes, sure.
And another thing that I was thinking, when I had my yoga class in the gym last night, we were all sweltering in the heat, was that I think they should put in,
Air conditioning.
That's exactly what I mean. The rooms are really light and well designed, but they do need proper installations.
Sure. Well, I've made a note of that.
Good.
So, is there anything else you'd like to suggest? About quality of service, for example?
Oh, everyone's very nice here. They couldn't be more friendly and helpful. Oh, but I tell you what, it's a shame the restaurant isn't open in the evening on Saturday, and Sunday as well, for that matter.
So, the club should...
Open it later on those days.
OK. Well, thank you very much. That's all the questions I have.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You will hear a conversation between an Ielts candidate and an Ielts administrator.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Good afternoon. I'm applying for a master's program at the University of Exeter in the UK. I'm planning to register for the Ielts exam at your centre next month. I have some questions I'd like to ask you before I register, if that's okay.
Certainly. Would you be taking the academic module?
I think so, but I'll have to contact the university just to make sure.
You'll probably need the academic because most universities don't accept the general training. And anyway, the procedures to register for the exam are the same for both the general and the academic modules.
Good. My first question is whether I sit all parts of the exam on the same day. I don't live here, you see, and for me it would be more convenient to do all the papers on the same day.
Unfortunately, the speaking part is scheduled for Thursdays, and reading, writing and listening tests take place on Saturdays. We can't change the days, I'm afraid.
That's a pity. Well, never mind. What sort of documents do I need to bring in order to register?
You'll have to fill in the Ielts application form and bring an ID, a copy of your ID, and 2 passport-size photos on a white background.
Will any ID do?
We only accept original passports and national IDs.
That's good to know. Did you say that reading, writing and listening are scheduled for Saturday?
That's right.
Will I get a break in between the papers?
I'm afraid there aren't any breaks between the papers. Each paper takes an hour to complete, so it's 3 hours straight through. You'll first do listening and then reading, followed by the writing test. This is a standard requirement from Cambridge.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Okay, and how soon after the test can I pick up my results?
It takes 13 calendar days for the results to be processed.
Can you let me know how much it is and the form of payment?
The examination fee is $200. You can pay by credit or debit card. We also accept checks. We only accept cash as a form of payment in exceptional circumstances.
And one last question. Can I mail you the application documents?
Certainly. You can send all the documents by registered mail to our address, 47 Clover Place, New Rochelle, New York.
Could you spell New Rochelle for me, please?
Certainly. Newrochle.
Could I have the zip code as well?
Sure. Our zip code is 10806.
Thanks.
You can also email us at inquiry@examsmail.com or phone us at 325-9082.
I think that's all. Thank you very much for all the information. Bye.
You're welcome. Goodbye.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You will hear Peter Walsh being interviewed for a job. Listen and choose the correct answer for each question.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Joanne!
Hi, you must be Rob. Nice to meet you. So, I hear you're planning to visit Australia.
Yeah, and I really wanted to talk to you because I was thinking of spending some time in Darwin, and my sister told me you're from there.
That's right.
So, tell me about it.
Well, where shall I start? Well, Darwin's in what they call the top end, because it's right up at the northern end of Australia, and it's quite different from the rest of Australia in terms of cultural influences. In fact, it's nearer to Jakarta in Indonesia than it is to Sydney, so you get a very strong Asian influence there. That means we get lots of tourists. People from other parts of Australia are attracted by this sort of international cosmopolitan image. And as well as that, we've got the same laid-back atmosphere you get all over Australia. Probably more so, if anything, because of the climate. But what a lot of the tourists don't realize until they get there is that the city's also got a very young population. The average age is just 29, and this makes the whole place very buzzy. Some people think that there might not be that much going on as far as art, music, dancing, and so on are concerned, because it's so remote. I mean, we don't really get things like theater and opera in the same way as cities down in the south, like Sydney, for example, because of the transport expenses. But in fact, what happens is that we just do it ourselves. Lots of people play music, classical as well as pop, and there are things like artist groups and writers groups and dance classes. Everyone does something. We don't just sit and watch other people.
You said it's very international.
Yeah, they say there are over 70 different nationalities in Darwin. For instance, there's been a Chinese population there for over 100 years. We've even got a Chinese temple. It was built way back in 1887, but when a very bad storm, a cyclone in fact, hit Darwin in the 1970s, it was almost completely destroyed. The only parts of the temple that survived were part of the altars and the stone lions, but after the storm, they reconstructed it using modern materials. It's still used as a religious center today, but it's open to tourists too, and it's definitely worth going to see it. Oh, and as far as getting around goes, you'll see the places that advertise bicycles for hire. But I wouldn't recommend it. A lot of the year, it's just so hot and humid. Some tourists think it'll be fine because there's not much in the way of hills and the traffic's quite light compared with some places, but believe me, you're better off with public transport. It's fine and not expensive. Or you can hire a car, but it's not really worth it.
What's the swimming like?
Well, there are some good beaches, but the trouble is that there's this nasty creature called the box jellyfish, and if it stings you, you're in bad trouble. So you have to be very careful most of the year, especially in the winter months. You can wear a lycra suit to cover your arms and legs, but I wouldn't like to risk it even so, personally. And there are the saltwater crocodiles, too. I mean, I don't want to put you off. There are protected swimming areas netted off where you'll be safe from jellyfish and crocs, or there are the public swimming pools. They're fine, of course.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
And answer the questions.
Please sit down, Mr. Walsh. My name's Jane Swain, and I'm the personnel manager.
Hello, how do you do?
Now, this is just a short preliminary interview. I'd like to chat about your present job and what you've done up till now.
Yes, of course.
Well, could you tell me how long you've had your present position in Weston's? It is Weston's, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. I am not sure. Let's see. I left university in 2005. Is that right? Yes, 2005. Then I was unemployed for about 3 months. And then I traveled round America for a few months. So, yes, it must be about 3 years now, in fact.
Yes. And have you any particular reason for wanting to change jobs? I mean, why do you want to move?
Well, I actually like my present job and still find it interesting and stimulating. The salary's okay, so it's nothing to do with money, though you can always do with more. I suppose the thing is that I'm really very ambitious and keen to get promoted, so that's the real reason.
You say you like your job. Can you tell me what aspect you like most?
Oh, my dear, that's difficult. There are so many things. The other people are great. There's a good cooperative atmosphere. I mean, among the staff, and compared to other companies, the conditions are great. I mean, the office itself and the working conditions. And then there's the fact that they give me lots of room for initiative and let me make decisions. You know, That's what I really like most about the job.
Yes, well, we're looking for someone like that. You know, someone who isn't a clock watcher and who isn't too concerned about working fairly long hours.
Oh, I don't mind that. I'm used to it.
And what about your education? You went to Manchester University, didn't you?
Yes. After leaving school, I started a diploma course in design, but I decided to give it up and did an arts degree at university instead.
Good. And have you done any courses since?
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
I've asked you here just to remind you about this Friday's field trip.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
OK, I'd like to keep this meeting as brief as possible, as I'm sure we all have things to do. I've asked you here just to remind you about this Friday's field trip. This is the first of many field trips you'll be going on, so there are a few rules I'd like to make clear now. Most importantly, I want you all to remember that simply because you are leaving the college does not mean that you are not studying. This is an essential part of your course and should be treated as such. There will be 2 assignments for you to complete whilst you are there, and some extension work you will be expected to do over the weekend, so I suggest you all pay attention on the day. Moving on, remember that we are going to a salt marsh and must dress appropriately. High-heeled shoes and t-shirts are not what I consider appropriate. You need good footwear, preferably boots, and you should bring a waterproof jacket as the weather is unpredictable. It would also be a good idea to bring a change of clothes. There is a chance you will get wet, and a 3-hour return journey in damp clothes is nobody's idea of fun. We will be on the marsh from about 10 o'clock to about 4, so you'll be given a light lunch. However, if you want to bring any snacks with you, then please feel free to do so, although we will be stopping for dinner on the way home. Now, this is the 4th time the college has been to Park Drive Saltmarsh, and so far we have never lost a student. However, remember that there are 28 people going, and if you are late, you will be keeping myself and your colleagues waiting, and at that time in the morning you will not find me very forgiving. Please try to arrive a few minutes before 7. If you are not here on the hour, you risk being left behind. For those of you who are being collected in the evening, you can expect to be back here between 8:30 and 9 p.m. But do warn whoever may be coming for you that the traffic is unpredictable and it may well be later. Before you go, I'll hand out your assignment papers and briefly explain what you have to do. Now, on the first page, all you are required to do is identify the flora and fauna on the page and find an example in the salt marsh. As I told you on Monday, you will need a camera for this. I recommend one of those disposable cameras rather than something more valuable, as the marsh can get very dirty. Now on page 2, you'll be looking more at the bird life on the marsh. You should be able to see what you have to do for this assignment, but there will be plenty of time on the way there to ask any other questions. Well, we'll stop there and I'll see you all on Friday morning. Oh, before you go, just a word of caution. The plants are there to be seen and photographed only. Remember that this is a protected site and we will have to get permission for this trip. If there are any problems, we may not be allowed to go again, and you will be spoiling the opportunity for other students. Okay, if you have any questions, come and see me later today or tomorrow.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Thank you.